A small group of Ukrainians is surrounded by Russian forces in what looks like the scariest combat footage I've seen. If you like this video, make sure you're feeding the algorithm down below, and if you're not subscribed yet, you probably should be.
The paratroopers hold two positions along this road. The other we will call the yard. The shelter is for resting, the yard for surveillance. From there, the Russians are only 600 meters away. We share the shelter with Sava, Punk, Morichok, and Albert. Sava, whose real name is Roma, is the commander, a tattoo artist from Kyiv. Punk is, well, a punk. Morichok used to be a sailor, and Albert worked in the IT sector, but his real passion was always the great outdoors. They belong to the Kaifariki. It translates loosely to those who enjoy life. They are, like many others in Ukraine, a group of friends who came together when the war started. What separates them from almost all others is that some were active members of various subcultures, like anti-fascist hooligans. They really are the complete opposite of what Russian propaganda portrays Ukrainian soldiers to be. Rebels, but with a cause.
An assault rifle isn't much use against anything other than infantry. With the PKM, you can at least engage lightly armored vehicles. Maybe even try to penetrate the rear of a BMP. We've got armor-piercing rounds we captured from the Russians from BMPs, BRDMs, but they won't stop a tank. We have one N-lock, but that's it. So if a tank comes rolling in, we'll have only...
Up against the wall, that looks like an AT-4, which is just, you get one shot at it.
When it's dark, we split. Our cameraman moves with the Kaifariki to position 2, the yard. There, the boys conduct small reconnaissance missions, checking the road, watching for enemy movement. It's silent work, but dangerous. You can be sure that on the other side, someone is also watching. I stay behind at the shelter, and I'm joined by Gaba, Django, Ene, and Obama. They are from BSDG, the Black Sea Defense Group, founded by Gaba and 2 others from Odessa. Also they are, like the Kaifariki, a group of friends, mostly martial artists, who gathered when war began. The atmosphere is friendly. We are joined by a cat that has escaped the war above in search of some grub and cuddles. That's how the night begins.
4 a.m.
At 4 a.m., bombs start to pound the village. The wall.
This is the yard. This is the space that's closer to the Russians, which is 600 meters away from where they are.
Trouble is coming. 100 meters away, the same bombs have ripped us from our sleep. But in the cellar, without eyes on the road, only the radio will tell us what is happening. The other group calls for help.
Sounds like the guys that are at the yard holding the line are calling for help from those that are in the shelter, which this is now the shelter, which is a relatively safer position, just not up on the line, a little bit further back.
Плюсяра, я информацию слышал, но мы пока не можем высунуть даже носа, ебать, хуярят очень сильно.
Шарю. Пацани, дуже швидко піздує, блядь.
Давай сразу их
Штурмовать?
Я? Штурм.
Okay.
Дайте мне РПГшку, АТшку, хоть что-то там.
Sturm. A storm. That's what they call an assault in Ukraine. A Russian armored convoy is heading down the road. The commander, Gaba, prepares an RPG.
Это что за хуйня, ебать? Я как будто разучился все делать, нахуй.
With heavy machinery, our only chance is to pray they don't know where we are, to wait in the shadows, and when the time is right, to pounce.
Отойдите, нахуй!
That looked like the law. You can see they're taking incoming rounds there, and this is the shelter, so I'm a little bit confused.
It's pure chaos. The guys are burning through ammunition, trying to stop the Russians from overrunning them.
The Russians are actually trying to overrun them right now. They said it was a storm, which is what they call when a group of soldiers try to take over a particular space.
The grenades start to run low, but still, there are smiles.
Last hope.
I doubt every Ukrainian holding at the bottom of the stairs is left-handed, so they're probably on their weak side using whatever cover or concealment that they have to their advantage. You know, I talk about on the channel switching to your off shoulder and when it makes sense for you to do that. So obviously they are utilizing what they can in that moment to protect themselves from being hit by gunfire.
In the middle of the battle, my night vision camera breaks. It records only static and sound. It's ironic because I barely remember any part of this, but it happened. Both where we laugh like maniacs.
I trust in you.
And where Obama tells me to kill myself if the Russians enter.
Знаешь, что ты можешь сделать?
Скажи.
Если они зайдут сюда,
He stops speaking. He puts his fingers to his mouth and pulls the imaginary trigger.
5 a.m.
Back at the yard, the Russians are closing in fast. Sava and his group are not as lucky as us. The enemy knows exactly where they are.
This is the yard now, closer to where the Russians are.
Малыш, малыш, сова. Малыш, малыш. Супер раз. Малыш, малыш. Тихо, Борщёк, тихо, тихо. Не задумай. Стоп. Пиздили.
The only way in and out leads through an open yard. Punk blasts his rifle, and with his grenade launcher, Sava, the commander, sends one round after the next, hurling towards the enemy.
У меня легкая в руку, сова. Легкая.
Then he's injured.
Все будет хорошо, пацаны. Я вас люблю.
Flying shrapnel scrapes open his forearm, but he continues fighting.
Notice his machine gun is now on his left side, again, switching shoulders.
3 hours into the battle, daylight breaks. It's hard to say what is going on in his mind as he calmly slides past the wall stained with his blood again and again, chucking grenades through the opening and returning to take a sip of water like some people spend the hot summer's day in a...
Do you see how short he threw that grenade over that wall? Wonder if he thinks that the Russians are that close, or he's just taking precaution at kind of throwing it close.
One of the BSDG always watches the entrance, ready to fire at any moment. They switch every couple of minutes. The adrenaline wears off a bit, and we can start to think straight.
Три танка, две бэхи, два БТРа. Наши. Ну, это было сегодня утром. Yes.
But the calm is deceptive. All of a sudden, we hear the gentle hiss of a gas grenade, and smoke starts to fill the room. I film the beginning on my phone before I can get my camera to work. Is it poison gas? Tear gas? Are they trying to smoke us out? Will they come in? The boys don't take any chances and start shooting. We are lucky.
So it sounds like gas started coming in, or some type of smoke, which could be a precursor for a storm or attacking that spot right there. The enemy thinking the gas or the smoke is being effective and trying to use it to their advantage. Now we're at 10 a.m.
The Russians have closed off the roads and taken up position in a house directly opposite. Because backup can't reach us, the guys try to coordinate Ukrainian mortar crews and drone units via the radio.
Там пидоры просят поддержку. Они просто за забором от меня, блядь.
Finally, a friendly drone drops an explosive over the enemy position. You can hear an injured Russian moaning in pain. He does not want to take any chances and leaves cover to fire an RPG.
Both sides are using drones very effectively. 1 p.m.
At the
now.
shelter, tensions are high. We hear voices. The Russians are just outside. One seems to be injured. We hear them chanting in unison, trying to heave their comrade over the ground. They call for backup. More arrive. Their voices get louder and louder.
Малыш, ебаните в нас. Малыш, ебаните в нас. У нас есть дохуя пидоров. Перекличку, сука, делают. Ебаните в нас, кто слышит.
Gaba sends a final call for help over the radio. There is a cellar, we hear one of the Russians say. They're coming. It is the moment when my life should be flashing before my eyes, but it doesn't. I only see Obama, his lips twisting around his teeth as he and Django stand with the guns in their hand. But once again, we are lucky. Our call for help was heard. Kaifariki and BSDG fighters assist with drones, mortars, and RPG strikes from behind the fields around. From above, you can see the full scale of the inferno.
I am a little bit confused why most of that was taking place at the shelter, because the shelter was supposed to be the relatively safe location away from the yard, which was holding the actual line closest to the Russians.
Firing at the Russians. Gaba decides that attack is the best defense. He throws grenades and then shoots an RPG at the house opposite us, where we suspect them to be.
Definitely don't shoot that thing in there. You're gonna have some serious problems. Even that close to that entrance was a little bit rough, it looked like.
Back at the yard, the situation worsens.
That looks like the house where the Russians were holed up in, where they could hear their voices coming from.
300! Сюда! Контроль!
Punk is wounded. A piece of shrapnel has lodged itself deep into his leg. The boys move him from the yard to the entrance.
I almost feel like at some point we got to start taking up some other positions, give them more things to think about, try to create some more angles. Staying in one place with everybody co-located in one place, especially one hole that you're just trying to cover out of one hole, could be very difficult as soon as you start taking accurate rounds inside that space to really do anything that you want to do. And very easy for them to advance on you at that point, obviously, if you're not able to return fire.
They realize that they cannot stay here much longer. Ammunition and energy are running out. The road is still blocked. To escape, the group will have to run.
This is back at the yard now, so they're kind of shifting it back and forth between the shelter and the yard.
Перед металом теж є траншеї. Вони вроді би чисті. Підерів там не бачу, як прийняв.
Плюс, а кто-то может артой подсобить, закрыть типа пидоров, чтобы в этот момент проскочили?
Пробуем щось.
Давай, на связи.
Just 50 meters behind the yard, the drone pilot has spotted an empty trench. It's their best chance. The only problem, the Russians have a BTR positioned at the crossroads. Clumsily, they have driven it into a ditch, but the crew is still inside.
6 p.m. at the shelter.
At the shelter, there is good and bad news. The good news, the voices of the Russians have died down. Are they dead, injured, only hiding? We don't know. The bad news, the house we are under and all the houses around us are on fire. The cellar starts to fill with smoke. We all get a headache.
Time to go, it sounds like.
Poisoning. As the sun slowly sets, we decide we have to make a run for it. The other paratroopers have set up a first line of defense at the edge of a field that ends right behind our shelter. My camera at this point has no more battery. The only footage we have is from Obama's body cam. We leave the shelter after 14 hours of hell and run.
That whole ordeal was 14 hours long. They were inside of that little space, that little hole.
Sava and the others fight their way out through enemy-controlled territory. All four, plus our cameraman, are injured. Their exit
Look at that
was
dude's eye. Look at that dude's eyes over there on the end. That looks like shell shock.
having survived only due to the bravery and resilience of the commanders Sava, Gaba, and their boys. We head home with a near-death experience that hopefully...
If you'd like to subscribe to this channel, you can do that by tapping on this photo. I do appreciate everyone's support in helping me build this channel. If you have anything that you'd like to add to this video, make sure you leave it in the comments.